9:06.
The Radio Wammo Breakfast.
Live from the New Scientist Labs, Janine Young, newscientist.com.
Indeed, in Melbourne City it is. Janine Young joining us this morning. Hello, Janine.
Good morning.
Good morning. And, gosh, it's a strange light on you this morning there if anyone's watching the live video stream. I wonder if that's got anything to do with one of the stories we've got coming up. The zombie apocalypse is nigh.
It's not a zombie apocalypse, and you know it.
All right, well, we are talking in a very loose sense today, sex and zombies. Let's look at the first story first of all, the weird and wonderful world of animal reproduction, Janine.
Yes, we're in for a couple of weird stories this morning. If humans are concerned about things like, S&M or same-sex marriage or anything like that, all they really need to do is look at the animal kingdom and find that really it's all very dull in comparison. Used to think that it was very much a haughty, very out-there male who's strong and fit, courted a coy female, they did the deed, and everything turned out to be just great. It's not quite that simple. There are some fantastic examples of truly odd types of sex out there. Shall we begin with the praying mantis?
Why not? Gosh, that is a strange animal into itself, the way it sits there on leaves and just kind of stares at you and starts bobbing up and down.
Well, imagine if you're a male. What they want to do is to hop on, take a really good grip, and the grip becomes important, do the deed, and then jump off again. Because, unfortunately, when they lose their grip, they fall into the range of the female's mandibles, which are very strong, and males often get their heads ripped off. Well, a bit of a problem, you would think, but there are some upsides to this, not necessarily for the male always.
No.
Female gets a really good meal. Often they're hungry, so they're very happy about the prospect of being able to eat something. However, for the male, it's not all bad, aside from the fact he dies, because all the control mechanisms inside the male about stopping copulating are in their heads, whereas, if you actually keep going, those nerves are in your abdomen. So if your head gets ripped off, it means that you actually don't have a mechanism to stop copulating. So it means the female, how can I put this delicately, receives everything the male has to offer, shall we say.
Yeah.
And that means that the male is able to transfer all of his material into the female. See how delicate I'm being about this? I could be really
well done.
And I'm not. I know, I'm very proud of myself this morning. That the male is able to transfer everything he has, which means that his genetic material, shall we say, is able to go forward and produce more offspring, which is ultimately what reproduction and sex is all about.
Well, I think that is one example in the animal kingdom that we humans can be thankful for isn't replicated in our own sex lives.
Some women, if you catch them on the wrong day, might do it, though.
True.
Sorry, did I say that out loud? I'm not meant to as a woman, am I?
All right, what else? What other examples are there out there, Janine?
Well, we have things like aphids. Now, we're talking about bugs quite a lot, but sharks can clone themselves, and we have a whole bunch of other examples as well. But aphids, I think, are my favourites because they don't have to have sex. They don't need that kind of genetic mix-up that a lot of other creatures like humans do. They clone themselves, but they do have sex once a year, and they do this to get sexually transmitted diseases.
Hey?
Yeah, I know, there's the line, it's great. Often bacteria and the like have really positive things that they can do for other creatures. For aphids, there's a particular bacterium that is able to break down, to kill the parasitic, there's a grub that gets into them inside their systems and it eats them from the inside out. Not terribly pleasant, but there is a bacterium that's able to eat the bug before it eats the aphid. So by getting that kind of sexually transmitted disease, that's not such a bad thing. So they have sex once a year to be able to pick up whatever other infected aphids have. And for the females, it's not such a big deal in having sex because they don't need it for mixing up the aphids that are going to come next. But for the males, they hang around for a year and go, right, my chance is coming soon.
Yeah.
Because, males generally, and I'm not going to make any claims about humans here, we're talking about the animal kingdom, want to reproduce. They have a real urge. It's a natural thing to reproduce. So often they will go to pretty heavy extremes to be able to do so. Praying mantises and getting their heads ripped off, for example. the urge to procreate is very, very strong. So for the females, they're actually getting something out of it, and that's the only reason that they have sex once a year.
Fascinating. I came up against a very strange aphid thing the other day. We're on one of our fruit trees. We noticed something strange going on the branches, and all these aphids were kind of hanging out there, but there were all these little black pods as well, and there were a whole bunch of ants crawling around. And looked up in a book about it, and apparently the ants farm the aphids in some kind of Frankenstein-type farm outfit with little pods and stuff. They feed off the aphids, or no, they feed off the juice that the aphids extract. But they were farming the aphids to keep them around. They were actually controlling them. They were like their masters.
So the aphids were actually doing their thing, weren't being damaged by it, and the ants were getting something out the other end.
Yeah. Really weird. A bit
that
creepy.
That sounds like a symbiotic relationship to me.
So I destroyed them. I destroyed them both, is what I did. Got rid of them both. They weren't helping my fruit tree.
One approach.
Hey, from weird Frankenstein type reproduction and strangeness in the animal kingdom to something completely different. The hour before dawn can often be a bit weird in the night sky. Tell us about this.
If you go far enough away from civilization, and we're talking really, really remote here, there's a type of light called the zodiacal light, and that's because this dust cloud which is out in space reflects off the sun. And it generates a specific kind of light that's like a pyramid, and it follows the same sort of plane on the Earth and the way we look at the world as the constellations do, which is where we get the signs of the zodiac. So this zodiacal light has been a cause for interest, concern, consternation, I don't know what the hell it is, for at least 450 years. In the 1600s, there were a couple of people that were trying to work out what it was. For a long time, they believed that it was probably due to asteroids. Now, asteroids break up in the world and they fling. Everybody knows about asteroids. They thought that the dust from that was enough to be able to create this zodiacal light, because this reflection needs to have something coming through it. Experiments and thought in the last 50 or so years has worked out that there's actually not enough dust from asteroids breaking up, or long ones that have stuff streaming behind them. There's not enough of that to be able to generate this light, and even if it did, it would form in bands. So some researchers who were looking at, I need to make sure I get this right, they were looking at meteor showers, which arise when the Earth passes through streams of space junk, and this is generally little pieces that are millimetres wide to sometimes a few centimetres. So they were looking at this rocky exhaust from comets. And I thought, well, they tend to be between Mars and Jupiter, and they sort of string around between Earth and Jupiter, so maybe they're an option here. They've actually found now that these comets explode for whatever reason, and some of them leave these zombie, you're waiting for me to say it again, zombie comets. Yeah. No, we're not talking short of the dead or zombie land here. They're undead. It means that they're still travelling around, they're still breaking up, they're still doing what comets do, but they don't have the heart of a normal comet because they've gone cold, whether or not they've just died out, whether or not they don't have enough volatile compounds on the inside anymore, whatever, they're now effectively undead zombie comets.
Oh,
I didn't know until yesterday that we had zombie comets.
Yeah.
But what they're doing is leaving this trail behind them, and that's what they believe, at least from the experiments that they can do, that's what they believe is causing this zodiacal dust, because these comets are exploding. These Jupiter family comets come from a very specific area, and the dust is being generated constantly. And because of the gravitational field around Jupiter, it has effectively whisking the dust. So instead of just keeping it in a simple plane, it's kind of fluffing it up. So that gives it the odd shape when you look at it from Earth.
Interesting. But pretty much you're not going to be able to see this effect from a city. You have to be somewhere rural.
Yeah, the amount of light that we have in cities means that you can't see most stars, let alone being able to see something like this. If you head out into a really remote area, then you'll have a much better chance of seeing this. And we have a lovely diagram on page 41 of the magazine this week that talks about how best to see it from Earth, because the northern and southern hemispheres are different.
Yeah.
in these things, and it changes every 6 months with the seasons anyway.
Fascinating stuff, Janine. Thanks so much for that.
You're welcome.
And as you just said, it will be out in the latest New Scientist magazine, and of course also newscientist.com. Time now